Welcome to Podjunction, where business meets podcasting. Whether you're on a morning jog, driving to work, whipping up a meal, or just taking a moment for yourself, our weekly bite-sized episodes promise fresh insights from successful podcasters who have cracked the code of using podcasts to grow their business. So whether you're a podcasting newbie or seasoned podcaster, grab your notebooks and get ready.
Well, hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Podjunction podcast, where we talk about how to use podcasting to grow your business. Oh yes, it's the business of podcasting. We're getting into that. Me and the amazing Sadaf sat next to me, who's just made some very rude hand gestures, but let's just not go there. So welcome to the show. It's great that you're here. If you're first time with us, you know we're a fairly new show, so if it's your first time with us, a big warm welcome to you. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and all that sort of good stuff. Stay connected with us, because we just love talking about how we use podcasting to grow business, and we do it. We're practitioners of the sacred arts. And we also interview people who are also practitioners of the sacred arts, and we get to listen to what they've got to say, and we get to chat about what they've got to say, which is always a beautiful thing. And in today's show, we have
Rich Brooks.
It's almost like we rehearsed that. We genuinely did. I'm just going to sort that microphone out for you. There you go. So yeah, we got Rich Brooks. Oh, it's brilliant.
So he's the host of Agents of Change. His business is Flight New Media, and he had a conversation with Matt some time ago. This is a segment from that conversation, and in this segment, he's talking about how you can leverage your podcast to grow your business, or get more clients. Very similar to the one we had with Dan Budai.
Yeah, just you remember who we talked to.
Yes.
Just take your time. That's great. So we've got Rich Brooks. That's awesome. Rich is such a legend too. So do check out his podcast, Agents of Change. Especially, it's all about marketing and all kinds of cool stuff. So you do want to listen to it. He's a really cool guy, Rich. Really like him. We keep threatening to grab a beer whenever he's over in the UK or when I'm in the States. Yeah. So we might just get a chance to do that at some point, which I'm very much looking forward to. What's the name of his company again? Flight New Media.
Yeah.
So also check out his company. But yes, very good.
Cool.
So shall we start the clip?
I've got a question.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I've got a question. So in all of your years of podcasting, what was the most, I can't believe this is happening moment?
Well, when we were waiting to get on the show and you doing rude hand gestures. Swearing at me.
Yeah.
I think actually it was in a lot of ways it was last year. We have a podcast. If you're a regular to the show, I run a podcast called the E-commerce Podcast amongst other podcasts. We have quite a few now. And we have a podcast called the E-commerce Podcast, which has been around since 2019. It's got, it's a fairly good established podcast now. And as a result, some interesting doors have opened, one of which was last year I got to fly out to Sub Summit, a big event in Dallas, Texas. I'm going again this year, 2024. If you're in the subscription e-commerce business, you should definitely go there. Come see me. It'd be great, actually, to have a little meet up in Dallas. But last year, I remember sitting on their stage doing a live recording, the first ever live recording of the e-commerce podcast. And what I mean by live recording was there was me and there was Alex chatting away in front of a studio audience. And I'd never recorded a podcast in front of a studio audience before. And that was crazy. I love that. If I thought for 1 minute we could get an audience big enough every time we record, it'd be like having people sat in front of us as we record this podcast, either laughing or throwing things at you,
Or both.
Or both, yeah, or asking questions and all that sort of stuff. But it was really great, actually. And I had a big time doing a podcast event like that where you recorded it live on stage with an audience. And we're going to do it again this year.
Yeah, that's cool.
At Sub Summit. So, yeah, psyched about that. That was pretty awesome.
Cool.
Pretty awesome. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Should we go into the segment?
Well,
Yes,
you're in charge. So, okay, so here's the segment with Rich. Sedef and I were back after this.
So I guess the most obvious question here, Rich, for you is,
from an ROI point of view, and I appreciate there's more to it than just this simple question, but from an ROI point of view, does the podcast make sense for you?
Yes. I've never run the numbers down to the last decimal on this, but even if I just think of this one client that I have in mind who came through the podcast, basically he was an avid podcast listener, discovered the Agents of Change, and this is like maybe 6-7 years ago at this point. And he just basically shared on Twitter, when Twitter was for that kind of stuff, an episode of mine and said, oh, I really need help with this. It was on lead generation or conversion rate optimization. And so I tweeted back at him, and we exchanged a couple of tweets, then DMs, and ultimately a phone call. And we ended up getting his business. And he ended up spending $3,000 to $4,000 a month with us over, sometimes it was more than that. Sometimes it was less than that. But, it was well into the six figures over all these years. So from that standpoint, that pays for all my expenses and more. And like I said, there's been a few of other clients that we've gotten as well, but that's really been probably the biggest and most long-standing. So I think that, yes, it has paid for itself. And the other thing to keep in mind is, there's also the content play. So there's also that visibility factor. Sometimes it's, we talked about some people are just like drawn to, oh, you're a content creator, you're a podcaster. That raises the level of interest, the level of intrigue as well. So all of a sudden, you start to be positioned as a thought leader, even if you didn't see yourself as a thought leader. So from that standpoint, I definitely think that there is an ROI in there. But what I would caution anybody who's listening to this and like, oh yeah, maybe I'll get a podcast. It's about putting in the time. Yeah. No one ever got rich on their first tweet or their first YouTube video or their first blog post. It's about, or I should say almost no one, right?
Yeah. There's always an outlier.
Right. But for most of us, mere mortals, it's about putting in the time in the lab, getting better at the craft. And so find something that you enjoy. If you absolutely hate podcasting, then please do not do it, because you will make yourself miserable. But if this sounds interesting to you, I think that this could be an opportunity. But I would say, you want to get to episode 50 before you decide if you're going to quit. Because you're going to need to build up your podcasting skills, your interview skills, your editing skills. And yes, you can outsource a lot of that post-production stuff. But, that's it. Like, people need to know that you're going to show up every single day or week or month for them. That's when they start getting really invested in what you're doing.
That's really interesting. So do you do yours every week? Is yours a weekly podcast?
We try to. Sometimes I'll get like 10 weeks ahead. And then other times I'm like, okay, this is going live in about 4 minutes. So just be prepared for that. Sometimes it is a little hand to mouth. And I've gotten better at, when I have lost track of how many episodes we have ahead of us, and suddenly I find that it's really short. And then invariably somebody gets sick and they can't make that call. And so now I'm out, don't have anything to talk about. I've been okay with just letting it go. There have definitely been weeks, for one reason or another, where I just didn't have a show. And I didn't want to rush something. And I didn't have anything to talk about on my own. So I just let it go, and life moves on.
If you're intrigued and want to dive deeper into this conversation, check out Podjunction Cohort, where you can listen to the complete interview and much more. Simply visit thepodjunction.com for more information about how to join.
Yeah, welcome back. Welcome back. Do check out Podjunction. Podjunction. Got that entirely wrong. Check out the Podjunction cohorts for more information. To watch Richard's interview in full, which was a great interview. I'm just going to hold my hand up to the camera in case you're watching. Just put your hand in front of your face. The reason I want you to do this is because then hopefully the camera will actually get into focus. It seems to be out of focus right now. So sorry if you're watching on video. It will figure itself out, I'm sure. I'm just going to hide my eyes like this. Maybe it'll focus on me. There we go. Maybe it won't. The camera's just gone. I'm just not going to work right now. But welcome back. So, Rich, what do you think?
I thought that was really good. I thought he had some great things to say. What I really appreciated him saying was that actually the podcasting isn't for everyone. And because a lot of people jumping on the bandwagon, which is great.
Yeah.
But also, if it's not something that if it's not something that you love, and you're not able to or willing to spend the time building and honing your skills, then it's going to fall flat.
Yeah, it is. It is. It really is. It's interesting in the sense that he talked about all the other stuff that you have to do with podcasting as well. So not only have you got to be committed to podcasting, and on the whole, that was a weekly show for Rich. Yeah. Not only have you got to be committed to that, you have to be committed to following up people on Twitter, for example. He talked about, didn't he? And there's all that stuff that goes along with it that you have to do. And if you don't enjoy it, and if you can't be committed to it, then definitely don't get involved with it, because it is a fair bit of work.
Yeah. Yeah. Connecting with your listeners.
Yeah.
Is good, isn't it? And also because, one, you get feedback, and two, you maybe can get some clients out of it,
which is always a beautiful thing. So yeah, I thought it was great what Rich was saying, and interesting in terms of ROI as well, and not just. I mean, he gave an example of, a client that's brought in 6 figures worth of income as a result of the podcast. And I think every podcaster that's been around a while has got probably one or two of those stories. Yeah. But like he says, it doesn't, you don't make a fortune off your first tweet or your first YouTube video. At least usually you don't. You've got to be consistent at it, and you've got to put in the time, which I thought was a super valuable statement. So I think podcasting makes sense if you can put in the time and if you enjoy what you're doing. Right?
Yeah. And building that, and I guess as a result of that, you build your your loyalty with your listeners.
Yeah.
Oh, you fixed it.
I did. I just fixed the camera. Yeah, sorry. If you're watching the video, I apologize for the last few minutes. Sometimes it just goes, I just don't want to focus on anything. And now it's back.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was just saying that building loyalty with your listeners. And you're putting consistent quality content out there. And also I like, he's realistic too, that sometimes you just don't have a guest for whatever reason, last minute. And, you got to go at a sustainable pace. But if there's nothing there, then there's nothing there. Yeah.
It's interesting, actually, because if you do so he does the interview show format, right? Yeah. I've been on his show, actually. He's been on ours as well. That's how we connected. So I've been on his podcast, and it's a lot like ours in the sense of it's an interview. So like that clip with Rich was me interviewing him and having that conversation. So if you do have those episodes set up, you do have those recordings set up, I'm going to say probably 1 in 20 people from my experience, maybe 1 in 15 people, for whatever reason, will cancel that appointment, usually a few hours or the day before. Something comes up, they're sick, the cat threw up in the slippers or whatever it is, something has happened to cause them not to be able to get there. Yeah. And so if your strategy is live streaming, which is what we did in the early days, didn't we? We did the live stream thing. So we would have a guest scheduled in. We would live stream that recording out. And that would be our podcast. And as soon as that guest didn't turn up, you're like, oh man, what are we going to do? Yeah. It was complicated. Yeah. And so if you're doing the interview format, that is one of the downsides of that, is when guests don't show up, and how you're going to fix that. But one of the things that, one of the reasons we've done Podjunction the way we've done it is because it's a lot easier when there's 2 of you. Yeah. So when it's you and me just chatting to the camera like this, that's gone furry again. There we go. Just need to reach my hands out to it. When it's 2 of you like this, if we were reliant on a guest and a guest didn't turn up, we could probably quite easily just create a podcast without too much drama. Yeah. And so there's a benefit of of course, there's dramas with co-hosting as well, like when they make rude gestures. Just saying. I'm going to let it go at some point. Yeah.
Episode 50, we're still
Question that you've taken to this. I'm going to ask you a question before we get into the video thing. So episode 50, have you forgiven me?
Yeah. Yeah. I should make a note of that.
Yeah. What episode are we on now?
We are on 12.
Episode, well, okay. So I've got a little while. I'm okay. I'm safe. Phew. So yeah, like I say, the downside of the interview format is when guests don't show up. And I love what Rich said. I'm just okay if I can't put out something of quality, I'm just okay with letting it go that week. Yeah. I love that way of thinking, because there are so many times, and I've done this, well, we've done it ourselves, where it's like, no, we have to get an episode out. It's our commitment is to get an episode out every week, that sometimes you just put stuff out and it causes you a lot of grief. But actually to have the ability to go, we'll be fine.
Yeah.
You know, the world's not going to end. I'm not going to lose all my rankings. People will understand. You know, it's that kind of just being a bit more chill about it. I think if I did it occasionally, which is maybe how Rich does it, I think that's fine. If I'm doing it on a regular basis, I need to maybe rethink my life a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think every now and again, I just love that. It'll be fine. We were a lot like that in the early days when we started EP, weren't we?
Yeah.
Because we did seasons.
We did.
So we got around it. It's like, well, let's just record 10 episodes. We'll call that a season.
Yeah.
And then we'll just have an indiscriminate break. Just remember, it's like,
So we felt like it was time.
we'll start again now. You know, and we've got enough episodes for the next season. And that's kind of how we did it.
But I also remember you had to fly solo a few times at the beginning, just because we were still building the podcast and looking for guests. And it wasn't as easy at the beginning to get the guests.
We've talked about this before, haven't we?
Yeah.
Finding guests at the start is not always straightforward. It's not. I think I could have made it easier on myself.
Yeah.
At the point when we started e-commerce podcast, like when we started Push, we have something called the first 10. So if you ever do one of our courses, we talk about this. Shameless plug for the course. But on the course, we talk about the first 10, who your first 10 guests are for the show. And this is one of the things that we've figured out over the years with podcasting. Actually, just go and get 10 people that you know.
Yeah.
You don't have to know them super well, but there has to be some, you know. So if you look at the first 10 episodes of the Push podcast, first episode, I think, was Ian Finch.
Yeah.
Good mate of mine, having breakfast with him on Friday. Had Ram Gidimall, somebody I work with, a friend. I love that guy. He's such a legend. Ram, if you've not heard his episode, go listen to it because it was so cool. We had Chandra on from Pharmaco in New Zealand. We had Chris Ivers on from New Zealand. I've had Simon on from New Zealand. So these are friends. These are acquaintances. These are people that I know in industry that I thought would make an interesting set of guests just to get me going, right? And I didn't do that with EP. I think mainly because when we started EP, didn't really have a clue what format we were doing.
Yeah.
We just started and figured it out.
Yeah, but there was something nice about that.
Yeah, it's quite raw.
Yeah, and we kept pivoting, didn't we? But there was lots. We were learning so much as we went.
It was very much touch and feel. It's like we figured it out. And actually, I think if you're like that now, be okay with that. I love what Rich said actually about episode 50. Do 50 episodes before you decide to quit at it.
Yeah.
Which is in effect do it for a year if you're doing a weekly episode. And you might be listening to that going, that's a lot of episodes.
Yeah.
What's interesting, I can't remember what the stat is, but is it like 80 or 90% of podcasts? It's a horrendous amount. Don't make it past episode 10 or episode 20. And so one of the ways to win at podcasting is just do more than 20 episodes. You've done more than 90% of people, right? It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
And I think we were well into episode like 100 really before we started to get proper downloads on EP, on the e-commerce podcast.
Can't remember.
I think it was a high number. I can't remember the number either. I should probably go and have a look at the stats. But episode 50. The 50 episode challenge would be a really interesting. Can you do 50 podcast episodes? Can you do this for at least 50 episodes before you make a decision not to carry on with it? I thought that was really, really, really good call from Rich there.
I can't recall. Do you know if COVID around that time, did we get more listeners?
Yes. Yeah,
there was something about COVID, I remember.
COVID was great for podcasters.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of things it wasn't great for, but we did really well in COVID. I've got e-commerce businesses.
Yeah.
We sold stuff.
Yeah.
And the podcast listenership went up.
Yeah.
The YouTube channel subscribers, I mean, everything sort of went up a little bit, which was really, really good. But yeah, I think you're right.
Probably not that we're advocating for COVID again.
Just call the government. I need to get my podcast numbers up. Could you do me a favor?
Shut the country down.
Yeah, just do a lockdown, please, and that would be really helpful. I'd really appreciate that. Not necessarily a strategy that I would advocate on any kind of mechanism. Now, what else did you get out of Rich's?
So the whole networking side and the client engagement, like with that
you've got to get on Twitter.
That he gave. Yeah.
To be fair, I don't really do Twitter. I should do. I've got 40,000 followers on Twitter. But it's one of those where I think wherever your listeners are, they're going to be commenting somewhere, and having a mechanism to monitor those comments is critical. And just a quick plug, actually, not that we've got massive experience, but we've just started with Social Vista.
Yeah.
Or Vista Social.
Vista Social.
Whatever they're called.
Yeah, Vista Social.
We've got all our social media accounts on that. So not only does that help us post stuff, but it helps us monitor comments and direct messages all in one place.
Yeah, we can see the engagement and reach out to people easier.
Which is super important. You might not get anybody commenting on anything on social media for the longest time, but somebody somewhere at some point will comment.
Yeah.
For me, it's always been LinkedIn, which I thought was interesting. Well, LinkedIn and Instagram, maybe. I should probably log on to Twitter and find out I've got 4,000 unread messages and just go, oh, I should have totally had that. I should put that into Vista Social is what I should do. But yeah, do monitor your social media channels, because Rich would have missed out on a big deal.
Yeah, sure.
And just start conversations with people. I think that's what he did on Twitter. Hey, how you doing? You know, what did you like about the podcast kind of thing? How can we help you? And just start the conversation up. It's amazing. It's one of those things, and it sounds really weird when I say, I appreciate that what I'm about to say just sounds really weird. But when people listen to you on a podcast and you take the trouble to reach out to them, they can feel a little bit starstruck. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if you've ever done that thing where the first time I did it was a friend of mine wrote a book. He wasn't a friend at the time. I just read the book and thought it was a really good book. I thought the title of the book was not great, but I thought the book was phenomenal, the content of the book. And I put a note on, this was back when I was using Twitter, I put a thing on Twitter, or X, should I say. I put a thing out saying, great book, love the content of the book. And I think I made some wisecrack about how Americans always use a middle initial everywhere. He wasn't Richard Rising, he was Richard L. Rising. And I made some wisecrack about that on Twitter. And he made some wisecrack back. And we just got chatting back and forth. And I was like, man, the author of this book has taken the time to sort of connect with me. And actually he's a really interesting guy. It turned out he was going to be in the UK. I had him speak at an event, and then we've just become lifelong friends ever since, really. So when I go to Sub Summit in Dallas 2024, I'll go and spend a week with him because that's where he lives, him and his family. Beautiful family.
Cool. I didn't know that's where your friendship started.
Yeah, on Twitter.
I know you guys have been friends a long time.
Yeah, just interesting. So I think as a content creator, again, one of the things that Rich said is your credibility goes up in the eyes of people. You're seen as a thought leader in a lot of ways, just because you do a podcast. I mean, it obviously, we need maybe we need better mechanisms of grading how much of an expert we really are. But in essence, that's what happens. And being okay with that, and then talking to people that connect with you, is a really great way to start a relationship with your audience, with your listeners, because you take the time to listen to them. You always feel better. If you watch a YouTube video and you write in the comments and they respond back, you're always like, that's really cool. If you, like I did, I just tagged an author and they sort of said, I appreciate that, And Rich, he got tagged and he just started a conversation. I just take the time to do it. I think it's such a powerful thing. It's one of the great things about social media nowadays.
Yeah. They're so much more accessible, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Just check on if you use Instagram like I do. I keep forgetting to check it's almost got like the Gmail feature, hasn't it? Where you've got your primary inbox, and then there's the
promotional,
all this other stuff sort of goes over there. And someone sent me a message 6 weeks ago, and I'm just like, I just had to respond, I'm really sorry. I am really sorry. I'm so slack. I am interested in talking to you, obviously, but I think to do check that if you use Instagram. But yeah, it's one of the things actually thinking about it, what I don't do on the podcast, maybe what we should do is say, hey, it'd be great to connect with you. Just follow me on Instagram. Connect with me on Instagram. I'm Matt Edmondson on Instagram. Just go to @Matt Edmondson.
Yeah.
And maybe we should start doing something like that on social, or follow Podjunction @Podjunction on Gram. On the gram, yeah. On Gram. On Gram, as they'd say in Yorkshire. On Gram.
That went right over my head.
You Canadians. On Gram. On Tinternet.
I think he's saying Instagram.
On Gram.
Yeah. Or his aunt, I don't know. Aunt Gram.
On Onto gram.
Onto gram.
On the gram.
On the gram. Not even
Onto gram.
Instagram. Okay, gotcha.
Oh, if my dad hears this, he's going to punch me. He's like, what was that Yorkshire accent? That was just wrong on so many levels. But yeah, no, reach out to us at Podjunction on Instagram. We are also, you can also catch hold of me at Matt Edmondson on Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. Sadaf checks the Podjunction one.
I do.
And I check
So
the
let
Matt
us know what
Edmondson
you think.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us, say, how's it? But don't be starstruck when Sadaf gets back into it. She's just a normal person.
Which they know very well now.
She's just a normal person that swears at you when you're starting to record the podcast because people can't see it. And then she's just a normal person. She does charge $25.99 for an autograph, but she's a normal person. By the way, if anyone does actually pay you $25.99,
I'll let you know.
I want you're buying the beers. So, oh, anything else?
No.
We're about out of time. Yeah. We're getting there, aren't we? So, listen, it's been great chatting to you this week. Love that. Thanks, Rich, for coming on the show. What a legend. Do check out his podcast and check out his company, Flight Media. Check out the podcast, Agents of Change. I know, actually, he's got a conference coming up. So, check out the Agents of Change Summit. I think that's what he's calling it. It's got a whole bunch of speakers lined up for that. I think I'm part of the speaking panel.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I filled out a piece of paper for him. I've not heard back from him. So who knows? We'll find out. If you're going to be in Sub Summit or in Dallas in June 2024, definitely let's connect up. It'd be great to hear from you. Do reach out to us on social media and start all those connection things. But yeah, hopefully you've learned something from this today. Go do what Rich said you should do. Do the 50 episodes. Do connect with people on social media. Don't worry too much if you can't measure ROI to the exact penny. But you will have some stories. Be consistent, do some good, and don't be afraid just to take the average week off. Because why not?
Yeah, why not?
It'll be okay. We're not that dogmatic about it here. But no, enjoyed that. Thanks, Rich, a legend. Thanks, Bainon.
Thanks, Matt.
It's been great. All right, guys, we'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode at Podjunction, where business meets podcasting. If you enjoyed the insights from today and wish to hear the full conversation with today's special guest, don't forget to visit thepodjunction.com, where you'll find more information about how you can join today. Whether you listened while on the go or in a quiet moment, thank you for letting us be a part of your day. Remember, every episode is a chance to gain insights and to transform your business with podcasting. So keep tuning in, keep learning, and until next time, happy podcasting.